afro.
Really? Hello and welcome. We are the Aussie Guys. I'm AJ. Here with me is... Oh, G, where'd you go? G.
I'm in the tunnel. I'm staying in the tunnel. I'm not coming out. This is my protest against what Schepps did to me during the week.
Well, at least he's being practical about it. He doesn't want, he doesn't want to get fined. So.
He doesn't want to get fined.
In the tunnel.
Okay, you can come out of the tunnel with... Yeah, your protest has been registered.
I'm sure Matt doesn't want to be part of any controversy. Right?
Sure
we don't want to bring any controversy upon the Matt Waldman brand. And hopefully, whatever discussion we have, Matt, if you don't feel too strong about one side or the other, and if you want to stay out of it, it's fair game, all right?
Okay,
I don't want you to bring any controversy down upon you like the rest of the NFL at the moment. So
that's true.
They didn't even introduce me. I'm like the redheaded stepchild in this podcast. But everyone's complaining in the tunnel. Go ahead, AJ.
John Schepps, the architect of our Draft Circus series, and I just dropped our latest one. So we've done quarterbacks and running backs dropped last night. I hope if you're listening to this, I hope you've been catching those and gleaning some value from them. And as we say in the, when we put them out, they're really there for your reference. Like it's going to be good info for hopefully at least a good 12 months. And, when you start sort of looking at 2019 rookie class, you can come back and say, I wonder what those guys thought about player X and player Y. But
how wrong were they?
And look, we'll be updating our thoughts and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, John Schepps at Sliz Digital, and he is honorary Aussie guy and, the architect of the Draft Circus. A warm welcome, John.
Not so warm.
No, sort of warm from one.
That's a lukewarm.
A lukewarm welcome.
Yeah. And cold from the other, mate. Don't you worry.
And we also have, you've heard his voice already, because you guys are just talking all over my intro, but Matt Waldman. Matt, it's always, as I said just before I hit record, any excuse that we can have to connect with you is a good one. We love chatting to you, and obviously the RSP, people are all across the rookie scouting portfolio, and also it'd be remiss of me if I didn't mention your latest podcast, Matt, who I'm fully subscribed and I love it, the RSP Cast. So, Matt, a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. It's always great getting to be on with you guys, and since there is a chance to have a little bit of controversy here, then I can just add into it and say, listen, if you don't like the takes after 12 months, my name is Matt Harmon, and I write Reception Perception, because I have a feeling that we're doing receivers today, right? So
we are.
So no. But yeah, there we go. We can cause controversy with a bunch of those yahoos, that are that he's with now. So, anyway, hey Matt.
But the RSP Cast, Matt, fantastic. I mean, everybody is very familiar with your work on the Audible, but the RSP Cast. I mean, listening to it, it was a bit like, oh, why didn't Matt do this earlier? Like it really seems like an obvious kind of segue from the RSP.
It's been great, and I really appreciate that that kind of feedback, and I've gotten that's kind of been the tone of the feedback thus far. So it's been fun, and it's not really it's a fantasy podcast in a sense, but it's not one where it's blatantly so. So you kind of have to connect the dots with a lot of the stuff to kind of get the fantasy value out of it. But I try and make that easy enough where there's a nice bridge between, actual football and then the fantasy game. So I'm bringing on a lot of people who are like coaching consultants and trainers. I've brought on a musical performer who basically, he and I talked about football, but how there's parallels with that, as well as people who write for places like USA Football and Craft and Scouting. And I think that it's been a way of being able to just kind of bridge the gap between fantasy and reality, and that's hopefully that's what we'll continue to do with that RSP Cast.
Are you gonna get it on Podbean?
I haven't looked into doing that just yet. Mainly right now it's Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher, and I think Spotify. I got to see if I've got it on Spotify yet, or if I screwed up the application or not. So I'll have to check that out. But Podbean, I'll add that to the list as something that I should consider.
I'm a measly Samsung guy, so I don't got the iTunes. I guess I use Podbean. That's like my my podcast listening tool of choice. So I might have to get Stitcher or Google Play just so I can listen to your show. Well, we'll see. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to listen
Blueberry.
to you.
Okay. Well, it depends on whether or not I make a good judgment here or not. Is that it? We're so corrupt in America, aren't we? I mean, like,
well, yeah, this is what we're going to discuss, actually.
Well, but it's more so, Matt. It's not you.
Here we go.
If G likes it, I can't really back it right now. You know what I mean? I can't say if G likes it. I can't say it's good because we're really not. We're not in the same boat right now. We're in two boats going in opposite directions. You know?
Oh, you're in Congress. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, I built a boat, and Schepps came along with a drill and started drilling holes in it and said me, bon voyage, have a really nice trip.
Well, listen, do you want me to...
bailing ever since, I'm sinking.
As an unbiased observer, do you want me to pitch this thing and you can each then say your bit? So Matt, this is the situation. You could really put this in any context. I'm sure this happens all around the world in every fantasy league from time to time, is that player X, let's call him G, mentioned a player that he was a bit of a sleeper. This was before the latest preseason slate of games. Mentioned this player. Oh, I really like this player. I don't know, G, if you said, oh, I'm going to go grab him or something like that, but you said you really liked him.
Maybe I should put it across.
Okay,
maybe I should. Look, Matt, we had me and young Jonathan were having a conversation, and I brought up a player that I'd heard some whispers about in Green Bay that one Aaron Rodgers was absolutely wrapped with. So this was just a private discussion. John said he had no idea, had to actually spell his name out to him. And then, so I thought, okay, no, it's just a private conversation. Then we had our waiver wire. You can see where this is going. We had our waiver wire on Wednesday, which goes through.
It's a blind bid.
Blind bid. So I put my bid in. No one else is really interested in this guy.
I get $500 credit.
I get
500. We have $500.
It doesn't matter, mate. This has got nothing to do with the amount of money. Then I find out that I've been outbid by the gentleman that I was actually having a private discussion with about someone he'd never heard of before. Didn't even know he was on a roster. I don't even think he knew that he went to college. So
never heard of him.
Never heard of him. So I'm
not going to deny any of that.
No, exactly. So you get our bid. Now we have a bit of AJ. This is how we work because we discuss fantasy football all the time, as you probably do, Matt. With everybody there, and you all play in probably leagues together. Is that if you have a private conversation with someone and they have no idea, they don't go, well, AJ and I have never done it. Go and bid against you with that player. I actually did that this year. I took a linebacker this year in a draft that AJ had spoken to me about a month prior, and I did it without remembering who AJ spoke about, and then it dawned on me. So what did I do, AJ?
You said you'd deal him to me.
I said I'd give him to you.
Yeah.
But AJ said, no, that's okay.
I was going to cut this guy if you weren't being so salty and being gee, what happened last week when we were talking on the phone? You were going to – I told you were out in your big Aussie draft, and Nelson Aguilar was available. I said, gee,
have I said anything that's not true?
Listen to me. No, nothing so far. But let's go back. Let's go back a few days.
This has nothing to do with Nelson Aguilar.
What happened? You didn't take Nelson Aguilar because you thought AJ was going to take him. And what happened, G?
This is boring the hell out of Matt. I've stated my case.
What happened? Hey, did AJ take Nelson Aguilar?
No, he did not because he wanted Nathan.
Then what happened? Both of you guys missed out on Nelson Aguilar. Am I correct?
That is correct.
That is correct, yes.
I don't see what that's got to do with me, though.
I think that has a lot. I bid $25 out of a $500 credit. Mm-hmm. I was like, you know what? Maybe I will. Maybe G will forget to bid on the guy. Some guy that you're so high on. What did you bet? $1? What did you bid $1 on him?
$10. What would I bet any more than for someone that no one's ever heard of before? If someone else had got him that I hadn't spoken to, it wouldn't bother me. He had a big week. Mm-hmm. You can't just think that everybody doesn't know about a player. He scored a touchdown, mate. There's guys that scored touchdowns in the first preseason game that will never see the goddamn light of day in the NFL.
Gassing him up. Aaron Rodgers was gassing him up, correct?
Matt.
All right, so I've got some questions here. All right, I'm on my bench. and I just want to make sure here that did you Aussies kind of adopt that crazy, like, wearing the powdered wig kind of thing back from 200 years ago, into your legal system? Do your judges have to wear?
Yes.
They do? Okay, even better. So I don't have a powdered wig, but I do have a Green Bay Packers hat on, actually, right now. So,
There we go.
so with the cap turned around. So I have a couple questions. So the first question I have is, when you engaged John in this private conversation, at any point did you say, I want to tell you about someone that I'm really high on and I think is going to be really good, but I know we got our draft coming up and I need you to promise me that you're not going to pick this guy?
No, Your Honor.
Or should I wait till after I pick him?
No, Your Honor. I didn't say that.
Okay. So yeah. So I would say
I can see this going. I know where this is going already. This is not good.
Yeah, I would say all's fair at that point. So now you AJ and G, you guys may have kind of your own honor system about that, and so you kind of just assumed that John would probably just fall right in the line. But you know that we Americans are crazy. So, I mean, how did you think?
Yeah, I should know better.
That you didn't have to be explicit, with poor John here, and his kind of backwards, kind of thing going on here. I mean, of course he was going to take advantage of you. That's what they do. That's what we do here. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I mean, seriously, I would say, yeah, you probably want to. I know that.
I'll ship them to you. I'll ship them to you.
Here's the other one. I'll put it this way. I'll put it the other way. Gene Bramwell and I are pretty tight. So like you and AJ are probably pretty tight. So like I know if Gene wants somebody, I'm not going to take him because I know he'd do the same with me. He's not going to go. We've already had that conversation. And while Bloom and I are friends, and we're definitely friendly and we get along great. In a league, yeah. Unless one of us says to the other, "Don't take that guy," yeah, he's gonna get sniped. So I think that's what you have going there. You can decide for yourselves, what you think I thought about that.
I'll give him back to you.
Here we go.
If you reimburse me the $25 I spent on him.
No. I'll give you 10. That money I would have spent on him.
I'll keep them. You bid $10.
All I get out of that conversation is we ain't tight. So, just me and AJ.
Is this Kumaro?
Yes.
Kumaro, yep.
Yep, I figured. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, look, just because I heard that Aaron Rodgers has just quietly said that he might have found his next Jordy Nelson.
He certainly told everybody else, told ESPN how much he hated everybody else that was gone, except for the exception of Kumaro and D'Angelo Yancey after one practice. Yep. He was certainly a little salty about everybody else. So, but that's kind of how he is. He kind of gives everybody the stare, and they don't want that ray of, it's like rays of light coming out of his eyes when they make a mistake. They don't want to get the ray, when it comes to, to that deal, because then he'll go on ESPN and tell everybody how bad they are. So, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like what G's doing. Kind of what G's doing with me.
Yep.
Hey, man.
Calling you out. Nothing wrong with that, mate.
Well, listen, the judges ruled.
I'm just saying, man, if you didn't live by that code, you would have had Nelson Aguilar and some other jabroni in your Aussie league wouldn't happen right now.
Well, hey, let's get to the next case on the docket because we've got a full slate, gentlemen. So, the draft circus. So, Matt, we are looking a year in advance, and because we were certainly, as a lot of pods do, sort of looking at the rookie class in February, March, etc. And although that's great fun. And it's something we really enjoy doing. We really like watching film and breaking down these players. So, why not do it in advance of the college season? Get a year of watching these guys, on and off. But, instead of coming into it cold in February, we've kind of got some of these names in the front of our minds already. And that's kind of, I guess, also what you're doing. You're right across it. But what's that?
That's his thing. That's his thing. This is what he does. This is what
absolutely.
Matt does.
Absolutely.
We're trying to get a little advanced so we could try to keep up with guys like you.
Precisely.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. I mean, I better get started watching some film then, I guess.
Actually, before we start, I don't hear any sawing, hammering, no renos going on today, Matt?
Yeah, that's all done. Actually,
it's finished.
We have our house on the market, and now we're trying to sell it. So,
wow.
Yeah. So now that you got everything done, now we're going to try and sell it. So that's kind of good. That's going on. Actually, we have to make room for some more family at some point. So we're trying to do that, and We'll see in the next month or two. We'll see if the house is sold, and we'll be moving somewhere else temporarily until we find something else. So.
Tart it up and ship it out.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Do all that work.
Yeah. Isn't it strange how you do a lot of work and then you sell your house? It's a lot of people do it, don't they? It's just a weird phenomenon.
She's doing it. She loves it. So, she used to have a business doing all that. So, hey, it's good. And it doesn't matter. It's oddly quiet now.
Yeah.
So,
it's been a while since we haven't heard some electrical device going off in the background.
That's right.
Talking to
right.
I think last time we spoke to you, your wife was doing the floorboards.
Floorboards, deck, something.
Yeah, and then this whole summer she actually installed a shower and a bathtub. Ooh. And we did the entire bathroom, which is like right next door to the RSP offices here. So every once in a while I'd have to say, hey, you need to take an hour break here. I've got a show that I got to do. So, but that would be about it. So, yeah.
Very good. Well, listen, Sheppsy boy, do you want to jump into... Oh, you drive the boat, steer the bus. Lead us down the road. Where do you want to kick us off, and how do you want to run it?
Let's head into the tent, man. That's what I think. That's we're not on a boat, we're not on a road. We're headed into the tent. This is the draft circus, so we gotta get fully involved. Grab yourself some popcorn, get yourself a ticket. We're going into the draft circus. Here we are, and this week this is kind of like this is the what would you say? This is the highlight of the circus this year, the wide receiver class. I mean, we've gone through the QB class that was kind of underwhelming. I really enjoyed the running backs, and here we are this week with the wide receivers, and I think this is the belle of the ball. These guys are the dudes. They're the studs. There's a bunch of names, so many so that, like, of the big names, like, obviously there's a bunch of names. There's tons of wide receivers in the country, but there's a lot of big names. I'm looking around the internet, and there's a lot of guys who have these guys, like, all sorts of rankings mixed up. They got names I haven't even started watching yet, so I tried, making a list of all these players, and I've only watched probably 6 or 7 of them, and I'm going to run some names by you, Matt. You can give me your opinion of these players, and then if you've watched them, and me and G, we'll go back, we'll give you a little opinion on what we have to say, and then we'll move on to another guy. So, I'm not necessarily going to put these guys in order of my rankings because no one really cares about my rankings. You're going to hear my opinion, but this is a player that I watched that I drafted in a Devy league because I heard good things about him. And I watched some of his film, and he's good. But I don't know if I necessarily see elite player. So I want to hear what you have to say. And this is A.J. Brown out of Ole Miss.
With 4 defensive ends, their leopard package. Patterson thread hooks one to A.J. Brown, who takes it down to the 1 yard. South Alabama. Patterson over the middle. There is A.J. Brown, slips a defender, and then moves the pile inside the 30. Off play action, A.J. Brown. Patterson sold it, and Brown brings it home.
This is a wide receiver. He's 6'1", 225. He's projected to run in probably the high 4.4 area. He's a 1-year starter. He had 75 receptions for 1,200 yards last year, 16.7 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns. He was number 1 in the SEC in receiving yards and touchdowns in 2017. He's a slot receiver. He's good with the ball in his hands. So Matt, why don't we hear your breakdown of A.J. Brown out of Ole Miss?
Yeah, and certainly, we're early into the process here. I certainly have watched A.J. Brown, and he's a nice prospect. I like how quick he is and out of breaks on certain underneath routes, and he does a pretty good job of using his arm and his hands to be able to get some separation at the top of his stems. He particularly plays well against off coverage, and I like how he works back to the ball very well. He's aggressive at the catch point. He's someone that's just powerful, at that. For his size, he's someone that doesn't go down on first contact. He can break through wraps, and I think that he does a really nice job of being able to get yards after contact in the open field. and he's someone that's going to maybe not sacrifice himself, but he'll definitely work to get extra yards, and he's got a good awareness of the first down market as well. I think that as a player at this point, I love his awareness really more between where he transitions between the catch point and when he's working to get yardage. And I think that he's someone that has a really nice hand-eye coordination where if the target doesn't quite arrive where he expects it to, or he has to contend with some sort of contact that could otherwise distract another receiver, he does a pretty good job of being able to handle that. So there's some nice natural talent, or how would I put it, integrated techniques where he's able to, some of the things that he's learned, he's able to apply them in different combinations that other players would have probably had to practice to and still not have been able to accomplish. But there's a lot more I need to see because of the fact that, again, like you said, he operates out of the slot. I think he's someone that we want to see, how he is working downfield. Can he play outside? Is he someone, is he someone that also is going to raise his, a lot of guys that say at this point in college, they don't really care about blocking, and he doesn't really care about blocking. He's he has to raise his intensity about that.
There's a few guys in this class, though, that I was pretty impressed. Amon Richards being one of them, that they do like to get into it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There are some guys who are definitely that way, but there are some who you can kind of tell where they're like, I know that I'm good. I know that I'm a top prospect, and I know I don't want to get hurt. And I'm worrying too much about whether someone's going to roll up on me rather than focusing on making the play in front of me. And to be honest, I mean, the way the NCAA is, the way that we have, the way the NFL is, and that kind of gap there. It's not the popular opinion, and when you have your rah-rah analysts who come on who talk about effort, sometimes I think, well, some of these guys can't afford a meal, and they're trying to get into the pros, and they know they have a shot. There's a little bit of pragmatism that goes on with certain types of effort that they get dinged for on one level, but I'm pretty sure that the NFL teams know what's going on here too.
Gee, what do you think about him?
We got some opera singers and AJ's daughter is practicing opera.
Yeah.
No, look, look, mate, Matt put it perfectly. And look, the one thing that I really look for is hand positioning, because I found that a lot of the receiving core that came out this year, so many guys just don't have their hands in really good spots. They seem to cup the ball more than point the fingers to the sky. But he has excellent hand position. And the one thing, his reflexes, there's a catch that he makes against South Alabama where the quarterback throws with anticipation, and he turns his head, and the ball basically is already there. Like it's right in, and the speed at which he gets his hands up to catch the ball is just incredible. And I was watching that in half speed. I like to watch everything in so you can get a better idea, and then I watch it at full speed. And that was there in slow speed. When I watched it in at full speed, it was just, my God, how did he get his hands up that quickly? So that's one thing that I like, the hand-eye coordination, the speed of his hands, where he puts his hands, and the fact that he understands zone coverage. And if you watch him, he'll run and he'll change his route speed depending on the coverage and where the guys drop, and he just finds open spaces all the time, and that's something that'll bode really well when he moves into the pros. But I did notice when I went down this whole list of guys, just had a look, man, this is a tall class. I didn't see any 5-foot guys in there. I think this is all, this is a college, the tape's always a little bit, longer in college or shorter, whichever way it goes. But, mate, this is a tall class. These are 6'3", 6'2" guys coming out and athletic. But that's how
absolutely they are. And it's, I think that this is one of those deals where why this class is going to get a lot of buzz is that they see the tall, big, strong, fast guys. And that's what people think of as the traditional wide receiver look. And then again, you think about last year though, and we had some big, strong guys that were coming out who didn't get drafted very highly. And some of the draft analysts had them really high in their rankings. Equanimeous St. Brown is a good example. and everyone was assuming he's a top 5 receiver. Nope. When you really look at it, it didn't work out that way. And I think that is that because spread offenses in the NFL are being embraced a little bit more, and now they're looking at guys who can play a little. They're valuing guys in the slot who can play slot and a little bit on the perimeter, and that they're valuing the versatility of certain players or in ways that they didn't in the past. So now they're not just looking for one mold of athlete. They're also getting a greater value for certain technically sound players who are more advanced at that level than some of these big guys that they've tried to teach and haven't always succeeded with. So, I'm always reticent to get really excited about a class at this stage of the game, but there are some good looking players out here that I think are going to be fun. But there are a lot of people who were down on this wide receiver class of 2018, and some of those guys are looking pretty darn good right now in camp.
Well, let's move on to one of these big guys that you're talking about. He's probably the name I hear the most hype about. He's a big dude. He's physical. He looks the part for sure. He looks like wide receiver 1 in my eyes when I watch him on film, and that's N'Keal Harry.
To the outside for Harry, who adjusts, and a tremendous catch by N'Keal Harry. Rolling, Wilkins for Harry. Touchdown, Arizona State. Wilkins looking for Harry. N'Keal Harry out near midfield. And Lewis' message delivered because of the quick start they got off to is N'Keal Harry the catch. Breaking tackles, Harry to the 20. Brought down inside the 10 by
out of Arizona State. He's a 2-year starter. He started as a true freshman from 58 to 82 receptions in 2 years, from 11.4 yards per reception to 13.9, and from 5 touchdowns to 8. And he's 6'3", 216, expected to run in the low 4.5s. And, man, this guy, his focus, his ball tracking, his body control, his ability to high point, those were all things that excited me when I watched this film. So, Matt, what do you think about N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State?
Yeah, I certainly think that he belongs in the conversation as one of the top guys in this class. And for all the reasons that you mentioned, those are valuable things, especially if he's going to be a perimeter receiver, an X, a slot, a split end type.
Right.
So I think that he's going to have to work on route running a fair bit in terms of his footwork, learning how to be able to gear down and be able to break at a really sharp, even level. I don't think he's particularly agile as a runner, and I didn't see him get a lot of separation. And so he's a good 50-50 receiver, but he's going to have to be a fantastic 50-50 receiver to do what he's doing at Arizona State in the NFL. He's going to be a Vincent Jackson-like commodity. And I think that what he does do is he's a good blocker. I think that he certainly shows – he's one of those guys that does show that effort. I think
he's nasty.
Yeah, so he can sustain contact well. He can do it. He can work on that a little bit more, but his punch is very good. And I think that he shows the ability to make some sudden breaks, but it's not always there. So he has to be more consistent. Either he's been working on that and it's not quite showing up every snap, or it's something that's an effort issue in terms of that he just doesn't realize that, that's something that he's going to have to up his game with when he faces NFL defenders. But yeah, I mean, he's got some decent moves in terms of being able to get away from a defender at the line of scrimmage. He's got good technique in terms of his hands, and I think that he's someone that, when it comes to fade routes right now, that's very good. He's someone after the catch who, he's going to use his power, and that's going to work out very well for him. But yeah, speed breaks, some harder breaks on routes that are not just sideline oriented. He's going to have to get a little bit better with some of those, and I think he can. It's just a matter of whether he will.
I like his ability, like how he goes across the middle, and I think it could also be a chain mover. I like what you're saying about him needing to work on his routes, but I think right now he's also a guy who can move the chains, and he's also tough. He's not afraid to go get the middle, and that accounts for something for me,
Yeah, he just has to get he has to use his size a little bit better. I mean, like on the routes on the outside, he has to learn how to stack a little bit easier, which is, cutting off the path of that defender. So, I mean, he's he's a nice player, and he's certainly someone that will be mentioned at the top of the list in terms of conversations this spring.
Gee, what are your thoughts, man?
You guys are taking it all from me. But look, I don't mind his footwork off the line with press coverage. He's got a nice arm swim move too to get past the corner. I don't, as we found last year with the QB class, the QBs really didn't help the wide receivers out at all. And when you watch this, guys, it's a rollover of the QBs from last year, obviously, because we're watching last year's film. But I just saw a contested catcher more than anything. Look, he's got some good strength. We saw how he's a physical blocker. He adjusts well to the ball when given the opportunity. And I think the little bit of separation that he does get, it's not off the line, but he gets it just at the catch point. He's able to just use it like a bit of body, a little bit of elbow. Doesn't use his hands, so he's not going to get flagged. Was something that I thought was just really smart. And the fact that when he's going down the sideline, that he gives himself enough room to catch the ball and for the quarterback to throw it to a contested catch. He's not like tiptoeing along the tightrope and trying to maybe get a pinky toe in when he catches the ball. So I think that's just a sign of a little bit of smarts on his case. But there's a list of guys, and mate, there's a lot of guys very similar.
All right, so let's move on to another wide receiver here. I wanted to talk about Amon Richards out of Miami.
As he throws, Richards makes another catch near the sideline.
Speed and just his ability. Man coverage outside again. He has a little double move. He stops like he's going to hitch. He goes down the boundary, keeps some space.
Follow us. Rozier over the middle. Miami's got some room here. 20, 15. Richards, he's back in. Touchdown, Miami. Richards, one of the top young receivers in college football.
He's a player that I'm seeing mocked, as early as a late first. I'm seeing him a lot in the late first, mid to early second. And to be honest, I don't see it. He's a wide receiver out of Miami. He's a junior. He's 6'1", 190 pounds, expected to run low 4.5s. As a freshman, he was number 6 in the ACC in receiving yards with 934, and he was number 4 in yards per catch with 19.1. He had a meniscus injury during practice last year and cost him the second half of the season. He's a physical specimen, for sure. He's another one of these guys. He's all legs. He's a big physical athlete. He's fast, but when I watch him, I feel like he relies on his physical gifts more than he works. So kind of what you're saying about Harry, that's kind of my assessment of Richards. But another thing is, G probably dislikes this guy. We haven't talked about him because he lets the ball get to his body way too often. Yep. It's over and over and over again. He just lets the ball come into his chest. I see a physical specimen, but I don't see an elite wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that he's a guy that you can see that really show up against Florida State last year.
McFadden gave him fits.
Yes, and it was because he basically only could use one move off the line of scrimmage, and McFadden knew what it was because that's the only thing that Richards ever went to. So
and
he was
McFadden's not elite. He's not Greedy Williams.
No. Yeah, he's just a good college cornerback. You know, that's basically what you get with him. And Amon Richards is kind of like a one-note route runner off the line of scrimmage, and that was basically what you saw with his releases. And he got schooled. And you see the smooth athletic ability when he does have to use his hands to extend. He can. He just doesn't always choose to.
Right.
He's someone that he will definitely. In that game as well, you saw him lay out a defender and actually injure the guy.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that he's willing to get physical as a blocker. He's someone that I can understand why a team will like him. I don't necessarily always agree with the reasons why, but the reasons will be smooth athlete, makes things look easy when he's on his game, and he's someone that's willing to get physical. He's someone that has the athletics skill sets in terms of quickness and downfield speed and ability to adjust to the football, and that he shows some awareness of the boundary, though he has to get better with all of the techniques in terms of more releases, getting a little bit better with his breaks, setting up defenders with his stem, and having a little bit better boundary skills with his footwork to be able to drag his feet as opposed to punch them in the way that he does. Because when you get hit on those types of throws and you're just trying to tap your feet in, you get hit in the back, you're not going to be able to tap your feet in. But if your feet are on the ground as you're extending, you're gonna be able to drag those feet. But yeah, I watch him and I think to myself, it's interesting that he's seen as a top prospect and he's still at Miami, whereas there was a guy, and I don't know the reasons why he's gone from Miami. I know he got suspended for violating team rules at one point, but there's another former Miami player now playing a little further north than that, who I think is a much better wide receiver prospect.
Can you tell us who it is?
Yeah.
Don't tell Schepps. Don't tell Schepps. You'll get out and grab him.
I'm not in any leagues. What do I do?
Well, just tell me off air, Matt. Just when we hang up.
Okay. I'll tell it off air. Or maybe we'll get to him. How about that? If we don't, I'll tell it at the end of the show. How about that?
All right. I agree. Like I said, I don't have much to add here, but mate, he does have quick feet. He just doesn't know how to use them yet. But mate, the body catches, mate, when you are being pressed by a corner and he's right there, you have to catch the ball out in front of you. Mate, he gets some, and that's great, but in the pros, mate, the corners aren't let the ball get to your chest. They're going to knock it away, and he has some really bad drops, like simple catches. His hand positioning isn't that great at all, but everything else, on the money.
All right, so I want to I'm kind of going all over the place. This is a little out of my order, but here's a wide receiver I started watching today. I've only watched a little bit of him. I was kind of getting burnt out from all the film I've been watching, so I kind of just stopped after watching him versus Bowling Green. And this is Anthony Johnson.
Big completion to Johnson into the red zone. I mean, a little bit underthrown, and Johnson just goes up and snags that thing away from Obie Jackson, says, give me that. They get the ball into the hands of Anthony Johnson. To the 10, to the 15. And there's your big play receiver making a big play. When you need a play, you've got to go to Anthony Johnson if you're Drew Anderson. Pick up 18 yards. Now rolling right. Drew Anderson lofts it. Wide open man. It's Johnson again. How was he so open?
Wheeled in by Johnson.
A wide receiver from Buffalo. Not sure if you watched much of him yet. He's a senior. He's a JUCO transfer, 6'1", 207 pounds. He's another guy expected. All these guys are expected running the 4.5s, it seems, from this website I'm tracking. But he's a one-year starter at Buffalo his junior year, 76 receptions for 1,356 yards, 17.8 yards per catch, 14 touchdowns. He was number one in the MAC with reception yards, number one in receptions, number one in reception CDs. And his quarterback is a guy that me and Greg like a lot. We actually didn't talk about the show. We started watching him kind of after our quarterback preview, and that's Tyree Jackson out of Buffalo. I think that kid's going to shoot up boards. But anyway, this guy was Tyree Jackson's go-to. He showed, he's got some high point ability, but he's a little smaller than these other guys. He's got strong hands. I think he's quicker than fast, but I'd like to hear your breakdown.
Yeah, I watched him last year, and I liked him. He's someone that I think that – certainly he understands how to use his acceleration, and he's someone that does a pretty good job after the catch to be able to be aggressive and split defenders when he needs to. He understands how to adjust his stride and drop his weight to really work away from pursuit that's over the top, and he's good at being able to run through reaches and wraps after the catch as well. You mentioned his high pointing ability. Certainly that's a strength of his, and he does a good job of being able to shield defenders from contact to the ball. And I think that his intensity is also there as a run blocker. So you see a guy who I think understands that he's not from a big-time program, and that in order for him to get into the league and even probably to get an offer to play at Buffalo, he was going to have to play with intensity at all aspects of the game. And I think that you can see that he's been doing that, and he's kind of used to that happening. I think that, he tracks the ball very well, and he's someone that also sets up blocks well in the open field. So he's a guy that you could see maybe being used in the slot as a big slot player, kind of like Juju Smith-Schuster was, or Marcus Colston back in the day, or somebody along those, maybe Michael Thomas on the level of, that he can be able to do work on that level. I think he's going to have to get better at shorter timing routes, where some of the details that are missing from his game, where he's not selling the vertical route as well as he should. He's going to really need to do that because he's slow. I think he's slow from what I've seen thus far. Maybe that'll change, but he just looked slow based on who he was facing and how that worked out. And so is that a killer for a wide receiver? Not really. I mean, I think that slow by standards of what most people think a receiver should be. Most people have unrealistic standards of a receiver. It's kind of like, I think our draft community, and maybe not so much the draft writers, though some of them too, but more like fans. I think fans and fantasy owners kind of look at speed in the way that they look at magazine cover models and judge beauty. It's kind of like there's this distorted sense of what beauty is, and so we see, especially in America, where you see it's like you watch people on TV and you see someone who's on a television show where it's a realistic rendering of how people really are, and people will say, oh well, he's fat or she's kind of fat or this kind of thing. And they're actually a quite attractive person who just is of probably normal weight and they're not starving themselves for a camera. So it's kind of like in the NFL, you have a baseline level of speed, and that baseline level speed is enough if everything else is good. And I think that Anthony Johnson may well fit into that, but it's something that we're going to have to monitor a little bit more, and it will probably be a big deal come February, is how fast is he really?
Look at Auden Tate right now. He's a guy who got shunned. He was shunned, and I mean, bingo, look at me right here. I basically dropped this guy after what he did. I was like, no, I want nothing to do with. I also saw a lazy player when I watched Florida State. I have a cousin who goes to Florida State, and I was asking him questions about Derwin and Tate and Swift, and he kind of felt the same way about Tate. Tate looked like he kind of just loafed, and I think he didn't use his ability. I didn't think he worked as hard as he could, and I don't think he was as good as he could have been. But that 40 time killed him, and now look at him. I mean, the people are posting clips of him left and right, just plucking the ball out of the air, using his body well. So I definitely, I could see that. I mean, look at guys like Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, obviously these are big names. Jarvis Landry. These are all guys that have gotten it done. I'm sure there's tons and tons of more. But, what are your thoughts? Did you watch any of Anthony Johnson?
If this was Tinder, swipe right. Is it left?
Left?
Which way do you get rid of him? But he wasn't on the list that you gave me. So I've done some other guys who went on the list, but he wasn't one of them. So I just
my fault.
Swipe.
Well, I'm trying to keep up with you because every week you add guys to the list. So
I've got a few here.
All right. Here's a player. So I've been saving this guy. This is a player that this is probably my favorite in the class, and this is Kelvin Harmon out of North Carolina State.
Second and a yard, as if the down really doesn't matter. He's got single coverage out there. Allen is out there, but so is the receiver. Touchdown, NC State.
Kelvin Harmon.
Wow, Kelvin Harmon just took it away from Rodney Allen.
Harmon out of nowhere, just with his burst of speed, runs up underneath it. Beautiful throw. And then just a physical finish to the run.
And with that coverage right to the back shoulder for a completion out to midfield. Kelvin Harmon once again. That was beautiful.
6'2", 213. He's another guy who's expected to run the 4 or 5s. This game, I watched him versus Clemson and Louisville. And this guy he's a big wide receiver who excels with his hands and his route running ability. He's also got that high point ability. He's got good concentration, body control, hands. He stays low in his routes. He transitioned in and out of his breaks smoothly. He's a good back shoulder guy as well. So he's very good with those timing routes. I like him, and seeing him do it against Clemson, seeing him do it against big competition makes me respect the guy more. So I really like Kelvin Harmon. I think he's going to climb up boards this year. I think he's going to be a top name. I like him more than A.J. Brown. I watched both of them. I like Kelvin Harmon more. I want to hear your thoughts on Kelvin Harmon.
Hey, just before Matt gives his... Every time I get angry with you, mate, you pull out something like that, and I fall back in love with you, Shepsy.
So we're done now.
Yeah, we're good.
It's over?
We're good.
We're over?
We're good.
All right.
We're good. We're back on.
Okay, good. That lasted, longer than it needed to, G.
Okay. I just make him a point. Got to make a point.
You proved the point, all right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You can move on now.
Okay. Go, Matt.
All right. Harmon.
So I'm going to tell you this right up front. I'm going to give you a complete BS draft report on Kelvin Harmon, and I want you to judge to me whether it sounds believable or not. Okay. And then I'll tell you the truth of whether it's BS or not, in terms of this particular thing. Okay. So Kelvin Harmon, I think, is he's one of those guys that certainly he's long. He's kind of a long, strong player with good acceleration, and it's surprisingly good acceleration for his size, being able to come up from really, with the ball in the air. It's kind of like he's really good at being able to accelerate and break that surface of being able to, go up in sky and high point that ball. And it's really a pretty thing to be able to see him do. But it's kind of sneaky good because you don't really look at him as being unbelievably fast. But he's very strong. He's got a very good feel for being able to bait defenders and make them think that he's going in one direction, and it turns out that he's completely gone, broken into another. And then once he gets a hold of that ball, it's not going anywhere. I mean, unless, so that's something that you got to really like about his ability to go up and win the ball like that. And, he's someone that's just, it's tough to beat him in a physical contest because you're going to get nicked and scratched up just kind of being within close quarters of him. He's not someone that you're going to be able to push around a lot. So what do you think? Do you think that was true? Do you think that's it? True? Okay.
Geez, I hope I'm right. Because I'm going to screw up this piece of paper that everything that I've just written on here.
Well,
because I'm wrong.
I'm going to be honest. I just described my imagination of a great white shark coming out of the water, and applying that to football. I have not watched Kelvin Harmon.
Mate, seriously, that's on the. I'll tell you what I've written down here. I found him the best route runner so far in the class that I've looked at. And look, there's a ton of guys we haven't looked at. Mate, he's got quick acceleration. He's able to change his release speed, which I find fantastic. Corners don't know if he takes off and slows down in a heartbeat, and they're already out of position. That's it. They're gone. He's got open field moves, quick feet, puts himself in the open space for his quarterback to hit him, strength to break tackle. He's got excellent hand position, constantly double coveraged. His ball adjustment skills are fantastic. He's got great ability to judge the ball in flight, which is... It's a really strange thing I find, Matt. It's more the corners than I find with wide receivers, is the lack of being able to actually judge the speed of a ball in flight. Like we always speak about this when we have people on, because we were brought up in a sport where the ball is constantly in the air and moving. So we've grown up to be able to judge the flight of the ball very quickly, whether it's windy, whether it's a calm day, how quick the ball's travelling towards you, at what height, all those type of things. And I find some of the wide receivers really sort of struggle with that at times. But
Can I tell you why?
He doesn't at all. Yes, please.
Can I tell you what? It's funny. This is for real. So, instead of my BS, I just described a great white shark and tried to disguise it as a football player. Is that I had a conversation with a former scout this week who just sent me something that he was interested in discussing and thought I would kind of find fascinating, because he noticed that quarterbacks are very good at the best deep ball throwing quarterbacks are very good at a kind of a style of aiming or tracking a target in the way that hunters do, in a way where that you shoot ahead of the target to anticipate where the target is going to be, in certain types of hunting with certain types of weaponry. But then he talked about how he used to play baseball and talking about tracking the ball in general and just how you see and track the ball. And he said, I remember I was always very good at tracking the football, and this was a guy who played safety at a high level in football. And I got to keep it somewhat vague. And so he talked about how he was always very good at tracking a ball when he was young, and that he played baseball and the ball would be in the air, and he remembers that he remembers losing it in the sun and not being able to see it because of where the angle of the sun was, and he literally just was able to mentally just get to the right spot and hold his glove up, and it just landed in his glove, and it looked like a routine catch. And he said it was probably the best catch he ever made at any level of anything, because he had completely lost sight of the ball for at least about 5 or 6 steps. And just inherently had a feel for where that was. He says, so I was always good at that. But when it came to putting a helmet on my head and having that cage kind of surrounding my eyes, he said it completely changes the game on how good of a tracker you are, because the feel of the helmet on your head, and then also the distraction of the different structures that are within your peripheral can sometimes it's kind of like it jars the antenna signal. And I think that's kind of what happens there, is that the helmet can kind of distract someone's ability to track the ball. Whereas if they're just in a workout and they don't have their helmet on and they're catching the ball left and right and making these easy catches, and they're just kind of running through and doing some patterns like that on a pro day, which always makes me laugh, is that, or some light workout, that they otherwise are tracking it fairly well. Sammy Coates can't track a ball to save his life when it's thrown at certain angles over his head. But then you'd see him in certain practices and in certain elements where they were thrown in a different direction, and he would look great. And people would say, see, he can track the ball. And you're like, you're not being specific or detailed enough in terms of how he doesn't track the ball. And the routes that he can't track very well are, 6-7 different types of routes on the route tree. Yep. So that becomes important.
I also think this is going to be a good segue into the next player. It has something to do with, so not only just tracking, but it also is the ability to be able to shift gears when the ball's in the air. Some guys have that, and some guys don't have that extra gear. Because at that point, you should be running full speed, especially if you're running a vertical route or a deep post. You've hit full speed, but some guys have that extra gear when the ball's in the air. And this player, he doesn't. But doesn't mean I don't like him. One of my knocks of him, that's Jalen Smith out of Louisville.
That pass is caught. Quick slant. Jalen Smith wrestled down at the 35. Third down again. Big play for the Boilermaker defense after the turnover. Jackson's pass is caught. Burrowing near the goal line and in. They're going to give him touchdown. Jalen Smith. Wow. Long and over the middle. A beautiful passing catch. Jalen Smith has it at the 46-yard line.
Smith had over 100 receiving yards last week against.
He's a big wide receiver. And this guy, he's probably the fastest wide receiver I've watched. But when I watch him, when the ball's in the air, one of my knocks is just that I don't see the ability to shift up. It's just that speed all the time. But he's a yak guy, yard after catch. He lines inside and outside, but I like him on the inside. He's a big guy with crossing patterns and vertical routes. I don't think he's a wide receiver 1, but I do think he could be a successful wide receiver 2. One thing I didn't like about him is sometimes when he catches the ball in the crossing patterns, he holds the ball like a loaf of bread, and that's not excellent. Coaches aren't going to like that. But Louisville used him a lot. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's a physical guy. He's fast. He's got a good build. He's one of the more experienced wide receivers in the class as well. He's got 32 games under his belt from 2015 to 2017. He's going to be a senior. He was number 3 in the ACC in receiving yards in 2017 with 980, and he was number 6 in touchdowns with 7. He had a huge game against North Carolina, so if you haven't watched him, I'd go watch that film. And, I like him. So I know I said some things that make it sound like I don't, but I do like the player. He's a little top-heavy. He's got real small legs, but good player. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, he's not bad. He's not bad at all. I certainly think that you're going to, again, tighten up the routes, get a little bit better at all the different routes that you should be able to run at the pro level. That's going to be a little bit of a transition for him. And I agree with you that tracking the ball has some issues there. He's someone that it seems like he leaves his feet unnecessarily for certain targets, and he's someone that when he has to use the correct hand position on passes that are above his waist and chest level, he can juggle the ball. He can be a bit, and he had some issues being able to do that well, being able to secure the ball just on the first strike of his hands. So you want to see him get a little bit better on that level. But he does break back to the ball. He's an aggressive, physical player with good speed, and he can execute some good breaks. So I think his breaks are promising in terms of being able to get that separation. He's just going to have to get better at the first half of his routes, and so that his stem length is good, and that he also sells those shorter routes, because defenders may honor his athletic ability at this level, but they're not going to respect it at the next. It's just not that good, and there are very few players at the next level who have that type of athletic ability that forces defenders to respect them that much the way that they do in college. So it's not an insult to Jalen Smith's athletic ability. It's just that, he's an NFL prospect. He's not, the next Randy Moss, so that's kind of the thing when you look at him. I think it's someone that if he can get better at also, disguising some of the harder breaks that he has to run on certain routes, he'll become a more effective route runner as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I see him as a 2, because I think he's good with the ball in his hands, and I think that's where he's going to make his money, and I think that's where, teams are going to use him. I think he's got good ability, but I know there's some wide receivers on here that I haven't watched. Obviously, like Deebo Samuel and Colin Johnson and Felton Davis, and there's some other guys. And I know G's watched
all the guys that you sent me to look at. You haven't watched them, and you're bringing up guys you didn't send me. How does that work?
Well, I got
pre-production,
away,
mate.
man.
Pre-production.
I think isn't it kind of a good thing that you watch some of these that I haven't? So now you can go on. You got some airtime. Why don't you go ahead and you discuss these players, you and Matt, and I'll just sit back and listen and take some notes and see which guys I got to steal from you.
Mate, so which guys are left that you have looked at, or is that it for you?
That's it, man. That's it.
Okay.
Yes,
well, look, I'll put up a list of names to Matt. These are the guys I've watched, and Matt can talk about any of them that he'd want to. We've got Stanley Morgan from Nebraska. We got Emmanuel Hall from Missouri. Deebo Samuel. Damn, that boy's quick. But, man, he's going to be one of these guys that's he's just injury-riddled. He looked fantastic the first 3 games last season. 15 catches for 250 yards and 3 TDs, and then he broke his leg. So that's someone we could talk about. I don't know how much he could say. He's got to prove himself this year because he has a lot of hamstring injuries as well. We got Colin Johnson from Texas, Matt. Felton Davis from Michigan State. Anybody that catches your eyes out of any of those guys?
Who were the first 2 guys you met? The guy
Emmanuel
you mentioned
Hall?
after Deebo Samuel. Emmanuel Hall?
Yeah.
Oh, Emmanuel Hall. Okay. Yeah. Well, what's funny is the only one of those that I've watched thus far, even though those guys are on my list, I've watched about 25 guys right now at that position, and I've watched probably another 25 guys at running back and another 10 at quarterback and some tight ends. But I haven't watched those guys on that list, but I'd love to hear what you think about him other than Deebo Samuel, who certainly you saw the speed, you saw the ability to track the football, the skill after the catch. That's certainly nice with him. I just think from the technical side, we need to see more from him. And I don't know if that offense is going to ask him to do much more in a way that we're going to be, feel like we have definitive answers about his game.
Yeah, unfortunately, because you look at all these guys, and they're all quick. But, mate, he's got take-it-to-the-house speed. Like, mate, he's seriously fast. Once that ball's in his hand and you watch the safeties or corners trying to run him down, some of them just give up, and the other guys they never actually gain a step on him. It's either they stay at bay or they drop off, which can't be said about a lot of these guys. They have speed, but a lot of these guys will get run down. Emmanuel Hall out of Missouri. I watched a couple of games just quickly through him. He's a smooth-moving guy with speed. He has good acceleration off the line, excellent hand placement. It's really... How do you explain this, Matt? How do you have a guy that has excellent hand placement, but my God, man, then you start watching him, he goes, drop a ball, dropped another one, but his hands are in the right spot, but he just can't hold on to the ball.
Those are called stone hands.
Mate, but it's not just that. He's got his hands in the right position, but the ball goes through his hands. It's not like the bouncing off, which I'd call stone hands, where they hit his hands and he doesn't have that sort of soft set of hands. But it's just look.
How many games have you seen of him?
Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida.
Okay, so you've seen enough where he's dropped multiple passes in those games.
In one game, it was at least four, if not 5 in one game. But then he goes out and makes these circus catches. I'm going, who am I getting? It's a bit like when we did the quarterbacks, Matt. Jamon Moore. Like, I was watching his quarterback, and I'm thinking, mate, Jamon Moore's dropped 5 balls in one game. And yet, then he goes out and makes these unbelievable contested, like this is the draft circus, but circus catches. And you're going, so who am I getting? Which player am I getting?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think what you need to do at that point is try and isolate what types of targets where he's dropping the ball. And if there are multiple different sources of targets and it's in multiple different games and it's a consistent thing where he drops, at least one target or has trouble catching the target from there, that can be an issue. If his hands are in essentially the right position but may not be as crisp of a position they need to, and the ball's only striking one of his hands as opposed to both, that can be an issue. It could be at a bad day. That sounds crazy, but you can just have a bad day of concentration if it was just one play. And then also, if it is that everything looks perfect but it's just not happening, he's not being able to do it, that can tell you something about his hand-eye coordination overall. And that, like John said, he's just, he doesn't have it. He just doesn't have that ability to play at that high of a level. And it just doesn't, he's not able to click at that way. Those are the difficult situations, and those are the situations where a lot of scouts and a lot of NFL people miss on those players because they see all the enticing athletic ability, they see the ability to do everything right, and then they still miss. I mean, Jake Locker is a good example of a player who had pretty good technique as a passer, but still couldn't throw an accurate pass even though his footwork was pretty darn good. And he still had some accuracy issues that were somewhat troublesome. So, when you have those kinds of deals, I remember being on a show in Seattle and having the local Seattle crew talk to me from the Senior Bowl, and they loved Jake Locker, because he played there and played out there, and they were like, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'm not going to be a popular guest on your show because everything looks good, and there's not a ton of correction that's going to need to be done in a major way, and he still can't throw an accurate ball." So I'm curious to see how that's going to work out for him. Now, we never really found out for sure because he got hurt enough times that it just wasn't going to work out.
Did you watch Felton Davis?
I did. He was the next one I've got on my list right in front of me, actually, John.
Tell me. I watched him when I watched Michigan State.
Yep.
And well, go on. Were you going to talk more about?
I was just going to say with what Matt said, I'll go back and I'll have to go to maybe quarter speed now and have a look at the catches for Emmanuel Hall, because I did notice I'll have a really good look at what you said, Matt, but also he does drop them, like come to his body, and he also drops them when he's on the run, so there's that's a little bit concerned, but everything else he does really well, which is he might have just had a bad day, because I must admit I did write that was against Tennessee, so maybe it was just one of those days. Felton Davis the third, strong hands, catches the ball at speed with good arm extension. That's what I really like, Matt. I like guys that can move at speed and they still catch the ball out in front as though it's at practice. Like the game doesn't... I'm a bit nervous. I'll let it come to my body. I feel safer that way. He catches it at speed, hands out in front. Beautiful. Good understanding of his blocking assignments as a blocker too. He gets down field and blocks, either the safety or the linebacker. He's very good at working the soft spot in the defense, especially zone coverage. Excellent hand positioning, which he has, as I said about, he catches it out in front at speed. His initial speed, he's got initial speed to create separation, high points to ball. And the one thing I do like about guys that catch the ball with their hands, Matt, you're probably the same, is as soon as they catch the ball is brought straight into their body and protected. Yeah. His route running's a little bit soft. He doesn't really dig into them that much. But I found a lot of these guys, Matt, are the sort of smooth route runners and sharp, crisp sort of, because they're not small guys. We're not talking your little, your 5'11s, 6 foot. There's no Calvin Ridley route runners that I've seen yet. You might have, but I haven't in this class. But that's Felton Davis.
Nice. That's very nice. I mean, certainly. I mean, I think that one of the things is it's just harder to make those sharp breaks at that size. And so when you find guys that can learn how to do it, those are your Julio Jones, AJ Green types. Those are your players. And there are players who eventually learn and develop to be that way, but it's something that, you can expect that they have some work to do on that level. So, I mean, it's interesting to hear. I mean, some of those guys, it's funny, I have them on my list, and I kind of have like an appointment list of guys that I'm going through, and it's fun to listen to some of the guys that you've mentioned here because they're probably about in the next 3 to 5 players that I have to watch at that position. So there are some players that I would love to be able to, if you want as well, I'd be willing to share what my thoughts on some guys that that we haven't mentioned if you want as well. So let me know.
For sure. I'll just give you one more that I've looked at. And mate,
yeah, please.
This dude's Colin Johnson out of Texas. I don't know if you've had a look at him. But when I first started...
Not yet.
No, I watched the USC game, sort of watching, he sort of took a while to sort of grow on me. Like warm, I'm just sitting there going, okay, I hadn't written anything down for the first couple of quarters. I'm just watching, and then all of a sudden he does something, and all of a sudden it's like if you... It's weird. I bought my daughter bought a car, didn't buy it for it. She bought a car. I've never seen this colour car before in this make, and all of a sudden she's bought one, and it's everywhere. Like, you just start noticing. And he was a bit like that, Matt. He was sort of like, he hasn't done much. And all of a sudden he popped onto the screen and then, mate, all I can see is him making these catches. And look, he's a tall dude. Like I said, he's 6'6". He's a large target. He's got strength, thighs, obviously. He's got great ball tracking ability. He's a physical receiver. He's athletic for someone at 6'6". I get a little bit scared, these tall guys, that they rely so much on size and strength to outmaneuver the corners, but he doesn't, mate. He makes some diving catches that you'd see from some 5'8" guy. He has great comeback routes. He's got excellent hand placement. Just some of his, when he's going up over the top of and a contested ball, I'd like to see him not try and cup the ball. I'd like to see him still keep his hands up and how you pluck the ball away from the guy in front of you. He sort of tries to scoop it more. But, mate, he does everything you want from a guy, who's probably 5 inches shorter. Nice.
I mean, certainly that's a wonderful thing to be able to understand, see about a player like that, is that you just basically described a player in a lot of respects that I was mentioning earlier when you were saying, some of these bigger guys who round off routes a little bit more. You can see that he has that potential to be, the primary guy in that traditional kind of offense, as that split end. So that certainly is a nice thing to be able to be able to spot in a player. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him on that level.
All right, so some of the ones, I got my pen ready, Matt. Go fire away. Hey, are you still there, John?
Well,
I'm here, man. I'm ready to roll.
No, just turn it off. Just turn your speaker off. Matt's going to give me some
Well, there's some guys that are interesting that I want to watch more of, but I know a lot of people have on their radar, like David Sills of West Virginia. He's someone that can go up and win the ball and be a deep threat on the perimeter, 6'4", 203, and he has a really nice quarterback at the college level who's feeding him the ball. Jonathan Giles, who was from Texas Tech and now with LSU, he was a guy that, certainly you could see him working out of the spread offense very well and finding those open zones and doing well after the catch, as well as being able to win the ball in the air. And the same could be said about Paris Campbell of Ohio State. Seemed to be a little bit on the sturdier side, even though he was 6'1", 208 as his listed weight and height. He played a little bigger than that, but he was also a smooth player. So those are guys that I want to see more of as I get into their game. But then guys that I've liked more than even more now that I've gotten to see multiple games. Stanley Morgan Jr. of Nebraska. Very good hands. If you want to see someone that has excellent
I've got him on my list,
to be able to catch the ball. See, there you go.
Hey.
There you go. Stanley Morgan is a receiver that I think will be a kind of a receiver that could have a long career in the NFL based on if he continues to improve with his route running, and because he's not that prototypical size of the gargantuan with speed. He's more 6'1", 195. His father played in the NFL and was a New England Patriots wide receiver, and Stanley Morgan is certainly an excellent wide receiver back in the 1970s and 80s. And if I'm correct here that this is his son, Stanley Morgan Jr., I could certainly see how he could develop into like a Keenan McCardle type of receiver, someone that can become a high volume possession receiver who runs all the routes, can win the ball in the air, make some of the tough plays, and be that kind of strong wide receiver 2 in a really productive offense, but in an offense that may need him to be a primary guy, he can do that as well.
Just on him, Matt, just his quarterbacks, Tanner, these guys are really, you don't see the best of him. Like, to me, Tanner, it's as though he's like a thoroughbred horse you put blinkers on. Like, the amount of occasions that Morgan's like open, and I don't know if he's looking for highlight reel footage with passes, but a lot of these guys have done an injustice by the people that are, calling the plays, man. Like the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think what you have to do there is that it can make it more of a challenge, but at the same time, if you're studying the processes that the receiver can control in his own right, you tend to be able to cut through some of the noise of a quarterback play that isn't quite as effective. Now, at some point, you need to have the ball enough. It makes your job harder because you have to look at a lot of tape to get the same things that you might see out of another player with a good quarterback in like 2 to 3 games, and then you're watching another 5 to 6 going, yeah, I've seen all this before. Yes, I've seen that before. I've really seen everything I need to see. Let's just see if he's consistent with it. Whereas with a guy like Stanley Morgan, you might have to watch 8 to 10 games to get the same thing you get 3 or 4 from another player, and then you still don't know whether the consistency is there because of the fact that you've had to look and work so hard just to find 1 or 2 exposures to a certain type of route or a certain situation, where he's facing tight coverage. And what is, how many times have you seen him go up and win a ball in a certain situation or play the sideline or things like that? I'd say another player, Ole Miss running mate of A.J. Brown, is DK Metcalf, Metcalf. 6'4", 225, and he can certainly win the ball in the air. He's got that. He's got that strength, and he's got pretty good speed, and he's someone that's a little raw certain times with, just the techniques of earning good position and running perfect routes. But you can see that he has that athletic ability to develop into a top player. Think about, I'd say Martavis Bryant is a good example of a guy who was not always as polished as he needed to be early in his career, but won strictly because he could catch the ball, he was fast and could leap. And Metcalf is kind of a slightly advanced version of Martavis Bryant on that level. And if he can continue to improve, he's going to be something. And I'm going to talk about probably 3 or 4 guys that I really liked who may not be as highly on the radar for some, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how their senior seasons go. Deontay Johnson of Toledo, he's about 5'11", 181. He has excellent concentration. He's got sharp routes on the as far as an underneath route runner. He seems to have pretty good burst to get some separation. And I just really liked his all-around game. He's quick and he's technically sound as a receiver. And I think that, he's someone that may be underrated. And there are a lot of good receivers at Toledo, a lot of good college receivers at Toledo this over the past year. We'll see if he's able to still be among the top ones and kind of make a name for himself. A guy who seems to have been around for a long time, but, he's in his senior year is Hunter Renfrow of Clemson, 5'10", 180. And he's a terrific young slot receiver who I think just does a great job of finding open zones, makes some, clutch plays. And while you don't see the highly athletic plays that guys like Deion Kane and Bryant and Mike Williams and all the guys that play on the outside have often shown, he's been a really steadying force who makes a lot of the difficult plays in terms of reading coverage and being on the same page that they're kind of underrated in difficulty. They're not, college highlights a lot love to emphasize the physicality. Hunter Renfrow is kind of one of those guys that is not going to have that in droves, but it's certainly a guy that I could see having an NFL career as a slot man. And then 2 of my favorite receivers in this class. One of them is from Northern Arizona University, and that's Emmanuel Butler. And if you haven't seen Emmanuel Butler's game, you can go to mattwaldmanrsp.com and look his name up, Emmanuel Butler, Butler. He's 6'3", 220, and I think he wins the ball better than anybody in in college football right now. I think that he can go up and win the ball. His quarterback will literally try and find him in double coverage or even in triple coverage, and he'll win the ball. He's someone that has terrific hand-eye coordination, body control, strength, but he can also run some of those underneath routes. And I don't know if I would say that he has the agility of, say, like a Colin Johnson. I haven't seen Colin Johnson yet, but but he's certainly someone that is shifty enough to be able to get into the open field and make plays. But I was just tremendously impressed with this guy's overall physicality and skill to get open or win in tight coverage. And if he shows enough speed and quickness, and I think he will, he's going to be a real, underrated player in this draft class. And then probably the guy I was referring to earlier in the show, who played at Miami, but now is playing a little bit further north and never really got to start at Miami, just got to play a little bit, is Tyree Brady out of Marshall, 6'3", 208. And I watched him against North Carolina, and he dismantled the secondary of North Carolina on, comeback routes, curl routes, corner routes, out routes. He was someone that he could win with press and speed, off press coverage, and use his speed, or he could use his hands, and he had really sudden moves and turns to be able to break and get inside and catch the ball with his hands while he was getting hit. He had great boundary awareness in terms of when he's facing the boundary and having to look the ball in over his shoulder with tight coverage hanging off of him. He could make those plays. And I liked the fact that he's someone that when he had a play where he kind of got, I call it a legal horse collar tackle, because the guy grabbed him by the front. He was with the defender was trailing him on a pass that he caught where he just beat the man heads up, and the defender caught up to him from behind, but then used his hand to work under Tyree Brady and grab him by the collar underneath his chest and yank him down from behind. And he kind of yanked him down, and his legs kind of bent funny, and he had to walk gingerly off the field and take probably take a break for I don't know how long, but it was probably no more than a series, because he came back in the next series and then ran just an excellent crisp route against the same defender on a curl route, caught the ball, turned outside of him, and then was gone for a 75-yard touchdown. And what I liked about that play is just that the play before, getting kind of banged up against the same guy, he was just kind of, he didn't get angry. He didn't show any type of fear or tentative play. He just came right back out and ran a technically difficult route and then was able to beat the guy. And so he wasn't seriously hurt, but it was one of those kind of scary instances when you're bent funny and awkward and you feel something in your leg and you may limp a little bit and you shake it off. You can be reticent about facing that situation again. And this was a guy that didn't show that at all. And watching a couple of games of his, he was just really good downfield, but also in the short game. He looks like a complete receiver to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see his name shoot up the draft board, by February.
All right, mate. So there might be some budding, analysts out there that want to look at these prospects. If you could, how many would you say? Would you say 3 to 5? What would be the things that you'd look at first if people were going to go look at these guys, or you want to do it yourself? As far as wide receivers go, what are the elements that you're looking for?
Sure. There's so many things, because there's probably, like, 35, 40 things that I look at with a player and broken down but at that position. But, overall, we'll start with the hands. Yep. Certainly with the hands, you want to see, does he use his fingertips to catch the football, and are his arms away from his body when he makes those catches? Most cases you'd like to see him do that, where he's been able to make those types of catches, and are his fingers close together from each hand, almost kind of intersecting to form like a diamond shape when the ball is high, and then when they're low, are the pinkies close together and the sides of the palms with those pinkies tight, so that you can catch the ball with your fingertips in that fashion. So that's kind of a basic technique thing, when you look at that. And then you want to look at, how flexible they are in terms of how easily can they come to a stop. It's not so much how fast they run, but how quickly they stop. A player who can stop quickly within, one step of top speed is someone that has a lot of promise as a route runner, because great route runners stop fast. It doesn't matter how fast they are. So again, how do you stop fast? Part of that is, in addition to all the technically sound things that you'd have to learn about route running, the other thing is, can you drop your weight, kind of come into a squat as if you're sitting down in a chair? And can you do that from a full speed set of momentum to be able to make that one hard step, or maybe 2 to 3 gear down steps, and drop that weight and have your eyes over your, kind of your head and shoulders over your knees as you're coming to that stop. So it looks like you're, dropping the weight of your backside. And when you can do that very quickly, you can come to a stop very fast. And that's a very important mechanism to route running there, as well as how crisp that player turns from a stop to a break of a route, and are they maintaining that line in a flat way. So those are some things that you would say from a route running, from a hands perspective. You want to see if they're comfortable with physical play, both as a route runner and a receiver. Can they take contact and not get distracted and still be able to hold on to the ball, or be able to still get open and catch the ball in tight coverage? Because those are realistic scenarios in the NFL. If the guy gets wide open and he's really fast and you're like really impressed with the speed, that's great. But remember, in the NFL, he's going to be facing someone that may run faster than him running backwards. And can he make those plays with someone who's, swiping at his elbow and putting his hand across his chest and pulling at him in ways that the official can't see, but it's going to be deemed legal? And does he get off his game, or is he going to be able to hold on to the ball? Can he take a hit to the chest or hard to the back and still hold on to it? And if he drops the ball, can he rebound and make good catches and not lose focus in the game because of the fact that he dropped a pass, that he's got the confidence to come back and be resilient mentally on making those plays. So those are some things that if you can, kind of watch those things, I would say that, 60 to 70, maybe 75% of what you're looking for is going to be, if you see good things from that, that's a player headed in a positive direction.
Matt, we have covered so much ground. Man, we've mentioned a ton of players, and really that's the intention of what we're doing here. There's names out there. You can watch them in this upcoming college season, and also with pointers like you mentioned, Matt, then there's things that people can actually sort of watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the rookie scouting portfolio, I'll give a plug for it, is that because the process is laid out for everyone to see, you can literally use that process. Everything's defined in writing in terms of what I look for and watch. So you can actually do that if you want, if it's something that you find that interesting that you would like to do, and it would give you a nice way of being a nice structure to be able to work on. Because I started doing this, we've talked about this before a little bit, but when I started doing this 15 years ago, certainly, I had a lot to learn in terms of about scouting the game, but I had a good process that I learned from a previous lifetime and applied that to football. And it was one of those things that, as you continue to build on it, the key is defining what it is that you're looking for. And this is something that I believe, an All-American rugby player and former linebacker at Penn State by the name of Andy Ryland talked about in a podcast with the Saturday to Sunday podcast crew, which is a very good podcast I'd recommend, with Paul Perticizzi and Matt Caraccio. And Andy Ryland is with USA Football, teaches tackling. And they asked him about, what do you do when you scout tackling or defenders? And he's like, I have over 20 key, process indicators that I've defined on tackling. And if you don't know what you're looking for, if you can't define what you're looking for as an evaluator, you're never going to find it. And you're never going to even recognize it, even if you see it, if you don't have it written down or, on a level like that. And I think that I find that to be true, because if you start to see things that don't match what you've written down or how you've defined it, and then you realize that you've got to change the definition, and you got to go through the pains to kind of research that and figure out how you're going to redefine that. And as that happens, your process grows, and then your eye for watching those things grow. Just like the way, I was listening to a guy talk about music recently, and I posted this on my site because I thought it related well to quarterback decision making. But he's a jazz musician, and he was giving a clinic about, how people hear things differently. And he was saying, when most people who are beginning trying to play an instrument, they're trying to play a musical line. If you ask them to sing it, that you hear them singing, it's just kind of like they sing it, it's usually at kind of a light volume in their head. And he said that's because they're hearing vaguely. They're not hearing it on a level where their oral development isn't strong enough, where it's not like they have to concentrate to hear it. He goes, for someone like me at this stage of my career, and for a lot of people who are at a level of, high level professionals, it's literally that what they hear in their head is literally screaming at them. Like they can't hear, it's like they couldn't not hear that if they tried. It's literally like it's screaming in their head, even with everything else going on around them. And so when you think about, how people play and develop, as you start off, it's kind of more like you're straining to see what it is that you're looking for, or to understand what you're looking for. But the more you do it, it literally begins to shout at you. So it just takes time to develop that, and over time it will develop if you put enough effort into it.
My kids would say that. I do a lot of shouting.
Yeah, you definitely. Yes, you do.
I do.
And yeah, no, that's one of the things that I'm glad you mentioned the RSP, Matt, again. But that's one of the things that I know I really like, and a lot of people do like, is that the process is exposed, and people can sort of, instead of just seeing, player X is really good for these reasons, you kind of break it down more so you can see the process, which is great.
I appreciate that.
When Schepps told me that he had managed to get you on for this, we were absolutely over the moon.
Fist pumps.
And fist pumps. It's always an absolute pleasure to chat to you, Matt, and thank you so much for your time. You're very generous with your time, and we really do appreciate it.
Well, you guys have an absolutely great podcast, and I know that John's going to be an excellent addition for you guys. And I mean, you guys watched tape, which is really a lot of fun to hear, and you have a great sense of humor and a very intelligent sense of humor, and it's just always fun to be able to come on shows like this. So, thank you for having me on repeatedly, because it's one of the podcasts I look forward to doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you guys. It was great.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was Matt Waldman. He's a fantastic guest to get on, as I said, and that's our wide receiver draft circus, boys.
Mate, he's always has been so generous with his time for us.
I definitely got some wide receivers that I got to do my homework on now. So, that kid from Clemson that he brought up, I haven't thought about him since I watched him beat Alabama in that national championship game a few years ago. So, Hunter Renfrow, I'm going to be watching him, and looking forward to next week with John Ledyard, and we're going to talk tight end, so it's going to be fun.
Wonderful. Well, let's put a bow in this, and it's a long one. I've got a bit of editing ahead of me, but it's hopefully really a great listen, and as we always have been saying with these things, file them away and give them a listen later on, or just inform your college football watching for this season. So well done, guys. Let's wrap it up on behalf of Schepps, G, and myself.
Oh, now Frank number 2.
Well, I've got to rotate it around. I've got to move
3, actually. The third one after yourself. Okay.
Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.